Welcome in, everybody, to the Pack-A-Day podcast. I am your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. You can follow the podcast at Pack-A-Day Podcast. Today, I want to discuss the offensive line, and more specifically, I guess, kind of the talk about the Packers draft along the offensive line, kind of in accumulation over the course of the last couple seasons. You don't have to dig too deep to start looking at the players that Green Bay drafted over the last 2 years on the offensive line and say, okay, Jake Hansen, center, John Runyon Jr., guard, Simon Stepaniak, guard, Josh Myers, interior offensive lineman, Royce Newman maybe could kick the tackle, but likely guard, Cole Van Lanen, likely guard. You've got 6 interior offensive linemen. Didn't really address tackle all that much other than maybe a Newman, a Van Lanen, a Runyon kicking there in an emergency type of situation. So how do you fit all of these players on the roster, and what's kind of the next step? You didn't address the tackle position at all. Now, before we jump into that too far, I do want to mention, just because they drafted 6 potentially interior offensive linemen doesn't mean that there has to be something to glean out of this. And what I mean by that is all of these interior offensive linemen were day 3 picks. At that point, you're literally just trying to get a good player regardless of position. And along the offensive line, you're usually keeping 9 to 10 of these guys in any given year. They're staying on the field more often. Like, the return on investment you get for offensive linemen is arguably as good, if not better, than any other position potentially. So I think that you don't have to read anything into this. But that being said, it is interesting that now they kind of have these 6 interior offensive linemen that they've drafted just over the last 2 years. You can even take that a step further and look at the guys they signed in undrafted free agency, whether it's Zach Johnson, Jacob Capra, Coy Cronk, John Dietzen. But all 4 of those guys, were undrafted free agents over the last 2 seasons. All of them also really probably project better on the interior of the offensive line. Now, Matt LaFleur has taken the idea of playing your best 5 offensive linemen really to the extreme with a high level of success up until this point. That's not a bad thing. That's a great thing. And figuring out the matchups that are going to work best and which linemen he can plug and play at various positions. I've really liked his approach. And to be fair, it takes offensive linemen with great versatility to do that. John Runyon Jr., Elgton Jenkins, Billy Turner, Lucas Patrick. These guys all have positional versatility. We might see and hope to see the same things from Royce Newman and Josh Myers over time potentially as well. Just the ability to play multiple positions along the offensive line. So we know that they're going to potentially move some people around and make some changes and kind of go with the matchups. And before I kind of get to the main topic here, the other thing that we need to kind of discuss, and still the elephant in the room along the offensive line, is just how healthy is David Bakhtiari going to be when the season opens? Is he going to be able to play to start the season? Is it going to be a month? Is it going to be a month and a half? Like, where is David Bakhtiari in his return from injury? Because as you saw on the title, today's topic is it time to move Elgton Jenkins to right tackle? And not only for now, but long term. And I want to just give you my initial idea here, why to me this makes sense. Look at the long-term players, where you really would like to plug people in. To me, David Bakhtiari is your long-term left tackle. We can't say this yet. They just drafted him, but they would love to fit Josh Myers in as that long-term center. Listen, if you're taking a center in the first 2 rounds, that is a premium investment at that position, and you are hoping, among hope, that they will be able to be a long-term player at that position. So I know he hasn't even practiced it down in a training camp or played a preseason snap, much less anything in the regular season, but I think that would be the hope, is that he's your long-term center. And then you've got all of these interior players. And then you look at right tackle. Billy Turner has the ability to play right tackle these next couple seasons if you need him to play in that position. He's probably going to be a Packer this year and next year based off of how his contract is set up. This year for sure, and probably next year. And then that's probably it. You probably move on from Turner after that. And as I kind of look at this and all those interior offensive linemen that we just mentioned, the fact that Billy Turner can play interior offensive linemen, and really with the idea in mind that it's maybe the most important thing here is to get your premium players at their premium positions, the positions that they're going to have the most value for you. And with Elgton Jenkins, there's a strong argument to be made that that's right tackle. Now, The counter argument here is to say, Andy, you just decide where you need Elgton Jenkins in any given game. If that's right tackle, center, left tackle, left guard, right guard, you do that. It's like an amazing relief pitcher that can pitch, the seventh, eighth, or ninth inning whenever you need him in the most crucial position, right? Just put him where you need to put him in any given week to get the job done. And that is a fair assessment. And frankly, if they went in that direction, I'm all for that. At the same token, it is very difficult to find high-end tackles in this league. And I think if you're looking long-term, you can, again, assuming that they've got the long-term center, the long-term left tackle, I think there's an opportunity for you to plug in Elgton Jenkins at least as much as possible into that right tackle spot and potentially fill those three main holes, the most important spots along the offensive line, left tackle, center, right tackle. Now, think back to these last two drafts and the undrafted free agency. First of all, you already have a Billy Turner and a Lucas Patrick who, going into this season, again, if Bakhtiari's healthy, if Josh Myers is your center and Elgton Jenkins is your right tackle, Lucas Patrick fills in at left guard, Billy Turner fills in at right guard, and you're feeling pretty good about yourself in the short term, at least, at minimum, right? And now all of a sudden, if a John Runyon Jr., if a Royce Newman, if a Simon Stepaniak, if any of those guys show that they're ready to play and be an upgrade from a Lucas Patrick, awesome. You put them in and you move them into that left guard spot and you upgrade it and you let Lucas be the main kind of, player that comes in should an injury happen. So I think that's a first thing that kind of piques my interest a little bit here. But more importantly, long term, the most important thing here is to kind of look at the long-term, plan here along your offensive line. And again, if you can plug those three players in, now think about all of those players that you just drafted. And we know interior offensive linemen generally are easier to find than a potential long-term tackle. And now you have all of these options. And you just need two of these guys potentially to pan out of Jake Hansen, John Runyon, Simon Stepaniak, Royce Newman, Cole Van Lanen, and then all your undrafted guys. If just a couple of those guys can pan out, and next year they'll probably take another couple interior offensive linemen, probably day 2, day 3 of the draft to continue to kind of allow the opportunity to fill those spots. To me, if you're looking at the long-term implications, and again, it fits in the short term as well, I think it very much can make an argument that you have your bookend tackles for the foreseeable future in Bakhtiari and Jenkins, your center and Myers, and you fill in with the best two players that come out of that group, the remainder of that group, whether that's a Royce Newman, a Stepaniak, a John Runyon Jr. And for the time being, while those guys develop, you've got a Lucas Patrick and Billy Turner who can play those two spots. Now, again, the thing that complicates this a bit is the left tackle position. If Bakhtiari's out the first month and a half, you have to decide, okay, are we going to put Billy Turner in that left tackle spot? Well, we just get Elgton Jenkins in this right tackle spot to have him start learning it and to have him start getting cemented into that role? Or do you want to wait maybe a year for this to happen? Let Elgton Jenkins start at left tackle until Bakhtiari's ready, and then move him back to guard or wherever he's most needed this season, and then maybe look at next year making that change and moving him to a right tackle. It could even be the year after that, right? It could be that Billy Turner holds down that right tackle spot this year and next year, and then after that is when you're looking at moving Elgton Jenkins to right tackle. And you can actually make an argument that keeping him at guard these next 2 seasons keeps his contract value a little bit lower. And then if you keep Turner at tackle the next 2 years and Jenkins at guard, now when his contract comes up, you're paying him top guard money rather than top tackle money, and then you move him to tackle. You're not making game day decisions and the decisions that are best for your football team based off of that. But if you do have the ability to keep Billy Turner there and Elgton Jenkins as an interior offensive lineman, theoretically, from a contract standpoint, that could actually pay some dividends down the road. So my point being here is Elgton Jenkins is one of your premium players, and ultimately you need to decide if he is going to be a long-term player at a right tackle. Is he just an interior guy? Is he a flex guy that's going to move all the way around? He is still 25 years of age. He has had multiple snaps at right tackle, both in college and in the NFL. He only played 32 snaps in right tackle last season, but he looked good when doing it. He played 169 snaps in college, but all of those were in 2015. But I have no doubt that he can go out there and play it at a high level if need be. He has every trait that you would want for him to be able to survive on the outside, and we saw it when he kicked to the outside, both at left tackle and right tackle a season ago. So Green Bay is going to have to make some decisions here, and I fully believe that Matt LaFleur is going to take this almost as a week-by-week basis and put his players in the best position to succeed, to get the best 5 guys out on the field. But my overarching final point here is, I think we've gone into this kind of off season and just looking back at these last 2 drafts and saying, hey, they've got David Bakhtiari at left tackle, who's coming off a torn ACL. They've maybe got Billy Turner, who's kind of an okay, solid right tackle who can play there maybe this year and next year. And then it's like Yash Nijman, and that's kind of it at tackle. And if you're thinking of Elgton Jenkins just as an interior offensive lineman, that tackle position is a big question mark. But if you change that thought process and dynamic just a bit and start thinking about the fact that at any given time, they can have David Bakhtiari at left tackle and Elgton Jenkins at right tackle, and in my opinion, solidify those 2 spots, that position becomes much less of a need, both in the short term and in the long term. And final point here, it just goes to show you just how valuable Elgton Jenkins is as an overall player along this offensive line, that we can legitimately talk about him and say, hey, he needs to start the first month and a half at left tackle. Perfect. Your hands are clean. You're good to go. You don't have to worry about replacing David Bakhtiari there. You want to make him a long-term guard center? He can do that. We know he can do that. You want to make him a long-term right tackle? Absolutely. Has the ability to do that too. It's just so rare to have that type of versatility and ability. And it's not hyperbole. He's that darn good, which is crazy. So a lot of decisions to be made here along the offensive line. I think it's a really interesting topic of discussion. I think they can go a lot of different ways. And again, kudos to Elgton Jenkins for having that versatility to play in those different spots. But I think Green Bay might be a little bit better at tackle than maybe we think because of Elgton Jenkins and his versatility to kick outside at any given time. That's going to do it for me today. Make sure to check out tomorrow. My goal is to have the TJ Slayton deep dive done, so you're going to definitely want to check that out. Definitely a player I've had my eyes on over the last few days, both at mini camp as well as breaking down the tape. So it's going to be a really fun episode. Make sure to subscribe if you have not already. Make sure to check out today's audio podcast with Dusty, Steve, and Sarah. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.